It's called the pleasure trap. And the fact is, food manufacturers fully understand this, and they literally have labs designed specifically to figure out which combination of chemicals to put into the food supply to make it more appealing, to make it taste better, because that's essentially what taste is how much dopamine secretion is stimulated by the foods that you're putting in your face. Pleasure trap also just coincidentally happens to be the title of our book, Mastering the Hidden Force That Undermines Health and Happiness, because it's our argument that the pleasure trap, this artificial stimulation of dopamine in the brain, is the reason people are overweight. It is the reason people are developing the diseases of dietary excess, the heart disease, the diabetes, the cancer of the breast, prostate, lung, and colon, the autoimmune diseases, that this is the force behind the fact. So what's an example of a chemical that food manufacturers knowingly put into our food, despite the fact that we know this artificially stimulates dopamine production? What is C6H12O6? White crystalline material called sugar. This doesn't appear in concentrated form in nature. You have to manufacture this. And we do. We do, to the point now where people in industrialized countries are consuming over 150 pounds a year per person of sugar and sweeteners. Now, I don't eat any, so somebody's eating my share too. And one particularly noxious form, high fructose corn syrup, which is processed in the liver much like alcohol and causes some of the same devastating effects, is heavily federally subsidized to make sure it's really, really cheap, so we ensure that the highly processed foods are also really cheap. We've increased the use of high fructose corn syrup over 1,000%. What's another chemical that we can put into our food? You all recognize that formula, right? Yeah. Oil. Oil doesn't appear in concentrated form in nature. We have to manufacture. You have to rip the cells apart and take the one highly concentrated component out. And we do some stuff with oil that's particularly obnoxious, like we'll heat it up to high temperature and then use it. We'll use things like starchy materials or whatever as a sponge to soak up the grease. Call them potato chips or French fries or what have you. See, I think we should stop kidding ourselves. Just find the deep fryer and stick your head in it and suck, because that's what you're doing when you're eating those foods. What's another chemical that's a precious commodity essential to human survival? In fact, this used to be so precious that it was used as a means of exchange or money. Absolutely, salt. Sodium chloride. Highly refined foods are what we call pleasure trap foods, or foods that contain added oil, salt, and sugar, SOS. Thus the term vegan SOS-free foods. These are the reason humans are getting supersized, because we're choosing to eat foods with these chemicals put into them. And they're so common, they're so ubiquitous that we think of them as normal substances, but they're not. Today, 93% of all the calories consumed by people living in industrialized countries either is animal foods, so meat, fish, fowl, eggs, or dairy products, or pleasure trap chemicals. Oil, salt, flour, sugar, dairy. Dairy gets to be on both lists. It's both an animal food with all the biological concentration problems and difficulties, plus it's a highly processed food, so it's like the perfect food if you're trying to get fat and sick. So the pleasure trap, the hidden force that undermines health and happiness, is any time you artificially stimulate dopamine production in the brain, results in potential vulnerability and difficulties. So the way that it works in humans is based on caloric density. So why would humans be designed as exquisitely sensitive energy detection devices? Why was it so important for our ancient ancestors to be able to tell the difference between calorically dense, valuable foods and less valuable, less calorically dense foods? Remember, they evolved in an environment of scarcity, so the brain was designed to make sure that you survived. If you could tell the difference between valuable concentrated foods and less valuable concentrated foods, that would have given you and your ancestors a selective advantage. So, for example, salad has 100 calories a pound. You need at least 2,000 calories to survive. So how many pounds of salad do you need to eat a day? About 20 pounds a day. Yeah. Can you eat 20 pounds of salad a day? If you start at 6 a.m. and you eat salad all day long till midnight, can you eat 20 pounds of salad? No. So you're not going to be able to survive very well on salad. Now, you can recognize that it's food, and if there's nothing else, you'll say, fine, I'll eat some salad. But your brain is not stupid, and it's not getting excited about it, because it recognizes there are some pretty serious limitations to this salad stuff. Fruit, for example, has 300 calories a pound, 3 times more than salad. What tastes better, fruit or salad? Now, why does fruit taste better to us than salad? There's sugar, which therefore stimulates more dopamine production in the brain. So more dopamine means it tastes better, which means it's more valuable, which means you're more reinforced. And, you only need 7 pounds of fruit a day to survive. So, it's still a full-time job, but at least it's theoretically possible that you could survive eating fruit. But if you're hungry, wouldn't you prefer to have a more concentrated source of calories, like potatoes, rice, and beans? Potatoes, rice, and beans have about 500 calories per pound, which means you'd only need about 4 pounds of these foods in order to survive. So if you have your choice and you're hungry, you're going to tend to go to the more calorically dense foods. Now, what if we invented a food? Of course, this doesn't exist in nature, but what if we invented a food that, say, had 1,200 calories a pound? Do you think that that would result in dopamine secretion in the brain and that you would like it and enjoy it? And if we introduced this food in the World's Fair in the 1800s, do you think people would line up and like it? And what if we called this food, I don't know, ice cream? Is ice cream a whole natural food? Have you ever fallen into an ice cream pond, and had to eat your way out? No, of course, this is actually fairly tricky to make, and you have to go through a number of processes. And in fact, you're such a good energy detecting device that you can actually tell the difference between the Diet Delight stuff and super premium double chocolate chip, can't you? Even blindfolded, you can tell. They're trying to fool you. They can't. If you melt this stuff down and it becomes a syrupy liquid, it's often described as sickly sweet. It's so sweet that it makes you sick. Now, why does it make you sick when it's warm, but when it's cold, it tastes so good? What is it, suck the sugar out of the atmosphere or something when it melts? No. Of course, it has exactly the same amount of sugar. It's just that you're not designed to detect and differentiate foods that are artificially cold. There is no ice cream in a natural setting. And it turns out you don't detect sweet very well when something's very, very cold. And as a consequence, to make ice cream taste good, they have to supersaturate it with sugar. So when it's warm, it makes you sick. It makes you just as sick when it's cold, but you don't know it because you're bypassing your detection mechanism. What if we came up with an even more concentrated food than ice cream? Higher caloric density, more calories per unit than ice cream. Do you think people would like this? Would it result in a lot of dopamine stimulation? And what if do you think people might even call this the staff of life if we introduced it? Have you ever seen this stuff before? Crusty on the outside, hot, steamy on the inside. Yeah, 1,500 calories a pound, and that's before you turn it into a butter boat. Have you ever been in a restaurant and they put a basket of this stuff on the table? It's all hot and steamy. Your brain detects it. Oh, give it to me. And you open up that napkin and you have a piece or two or three, don't you? And after a while, what do you notice about the basket of bread? It's empty. It's all gone. So what do? Yeah, you spread out that basket all naked there and push it towards the edge of the table. Napkin opened up, and you wait, and you wait. And of course, you're thinking, does this guy want a tip or not? Finally, the waiter comes by, he almost trips over the basket because you got it kind of sticking out there in the aisle there. And he notices that it's empty, and he says to you, "Oh, did you want some more bread?" Of course, first thing you have to do is pretend like you didn't know it was empty. And you look over there and say, "Oh, sure, why not?" And he brings you some more bread. Let me ask you, do you ever go into that same restaurant and say, "Excuse me, waiter, I'd like you to bring me 3 large baked potatoes because I want to eat those before I order my dinner. Do you do that? Do you eat 3 large baked potatoes before you order your dinner? Why not? Yeah, because you'd be too full. Because it turns out that 3 large baked potatoes is about how much volume the human stomach can handle. It would completely mechanically fill the stomach up. There wouldn't be any room left. But that same 500 calories of bread only takes 1/3 of the stomach. Because bread is a highly processed, refined food product where you've taken a grain, ground it into a flour, baked at high temperature. And so there's plenty of room left for the greasy, slimy, dead, decaying flesh, highly processed food stuff that they want to sell you. So what do you think you're going to be getting fat on, the bread or the potatoes? Yeah, it's not the potatoes. Of course, sugar, pure sugar, has 1,800 calories a pound. Do you ever go into that same restaurant and sit down and just say, have 11 teaspoons of sugar? Get them packets out and start just kind of... Do you do that? Why not? It's free. They don't even have to charge you for it. It's so cheap. So you don't eat 11 teaspoons of sugar before you... No? You ever have one of these? You know what this is? Yeah. Used to put cocaine in there, but they found a better drug. It's called caffeine. 12-ounce Coke, 11 teaspoons. Now, you used to have 10 teaspoons, but they figured out how to make it better. I think they didn't put 11 in the old stuff because it would come out of solution. It would show up in the bottom of the bottle, and people would go, oh my gosh, they're putting sugar in this stuff. But with a little more phosphoric acid or something, they can get it a little bit more in there. Now, it used to be a 12-ounce Coke might have been a special treat for a kid, right? Not anymore. Now it's a 55-ounce big gulp with free refills. Yeah, and that's not really enough. You got the big gulp, the super gulp, the double gulp, the express gulp. I swear, pretty soon you're going to need to have a bucket. That's the way. And I think in the future, the leading cause of back injury is going to be going to one of these stores. And it's going to have to, yeah. 25% of the calories in teenagers, according to some studies, come from the sugar and soda pop alone. Just the soda pop, just the liquid calories. We don't know why our kids are getting fat and sick. It's a complete mystery. Oh, chocolate. What tastes better, salad or chocolate? You think that's like a cultural thing? Or if we took 1,000 people from 1,000 cultures, lined them up, blindfolded, a mouthful of chocolate, a mouthful of salad, what, you think they could tell the difference? 2,500 calories a pound. Yeah. Of course, I tell my patients, if they want to have chocolate, what they need to do is melt it down or rub it all over their belly and hips where it's going to end up, and then they can at least wash it off and not carry it around all week. Chocolate. I mean, just looking at it's making some of you salivate. You don't even have to taste it. There was a survey of women, not men, just women. And they asked these women, what would you rather do? Have mad, hot, passionate sex or eat chocolate? 2 most common comments, what kind of chocolate and how many pieces are we talking about? Potatoes taste good, but potato chips taste great. And when they say, bet you can't just eat one, do you think they're kidding? Potatoes have 500 calories a pound. Potato chips have 2,500 calories a pound. 5 times the caloric density, concomitantly increased dopamine production. Notice my subliminal teaching techniques. Caloric density of whole natural foods, caloric density of pleasure trap foods, culminating, of course, with oil. 93% of calories, virtually all the food that's eaten now, as you would expect if you understand the pleasure trap, is either animal foods or highly processed food byproducts. Now, some of you are vegans, naturally optimists. And you look at this chart and think, but wait a second. 7% is still fruits and vegetables. There's hope. Let's keep hope alive. And I don't mean to rain on your parade, but of that 7%, 1/3 of it's just one vegetable called potatoes, usually served as French fries or potato chips. Fruits and vegetables no longer make a statistically significant percentage of the diet of adults or children. They are now the decoration on the plate. It is the pleasure trap. And it's a huge problem. And it's a problem not just for people that eat conventionally, but it's also a problem for vegans and vegetarians, because many vegans, as you know, are driven primarily by moral, ethical, and spiritual reasons, the protection of animals, the planet, and all the other perfectly valid reasons for being vegan. But they're not necessarily driven by their own personal health, and so a consequence, they eat a lot of highly processed sugar, oil, and salt products, to the point where you're seeing much of the same difficulties, even in people that are vegans. Certainly in my practice, I see a lot of vegans that have serious health problems, not because they lack animal foods, but because they're eating highly processed food byproducts.